When friends head out for a weekend of caving, they could never predict that they would be facing a life and death struggle to free one of them from a hole in the ground. Going headfirst down a narrow tunnel leaves 3 lives in jeopardy. This is the fatal breakdown of the Buzzard's Roost cave accident. 3 friends drove from Chicago to Cave City, Kentucky for a Memorial Weekend caving trip. They explored several caves over a couple of days, and on Sunday, May 30th, Bill, Kevin, and Jim began their final cave exploration in Buzzard's Roost cave system. They started the day with the general historic tour that the cave operators offered. It was a permanently lighted commercial cave tour, with mainly open spaces and easy maneuvering to make it through the full path. After a few hours on the basic tour, the men signed up for the more advanced tour, which included crawling, twisting, and squeezing through passages down below. The brochure indicated that this was a raw caving experience for the more daring visitor. The entrance was a very narrow crawlway, and for some reason, this set Kevin in a different mindset. He told Bill and Jim that he was going to skip this tour and just wait for them on the surface. They were a little bummed, but totally understood that Kevin had reservations about this one. The group would be 7 people: the tour guide Dave Hardin, Jim and Bill, and 4 others who had signed up for the tour. Dave handed out flashlights and instructed everyone to just follow the person in front of them and do what they did. He would be leading the group down into the deep passages and rooms below. Right away, Bill was struggling to fit through some of the tight wall slits and narrow tunnels. He was 6 foot 2 inches and weighed over 220 pounds, which made it difficult to slide past rock protrusions and squeeze through narrow cracks in the chamber walls. He felt anxious, but continued to follow the guide. Dave Hardin had been through these passages many times, so Bill was sure that he could fit, or Dave wouldn't have let him come. Right? After crawling through the breakdown section of the path, each climber had to drop down into a hole in the floor and crawl up the passage on the other side. It was just a few feet down to the bottom, where you could lay on your back and pull forward to the 8-foot climb up on the other side. So, in they went, head first, into the dark hole. Bill slid down toward the flat part and twisted his body to slide on his back toward the other side. He was squeezed on all sides in this narrow part of the tunnel, but he quickly saw the flashlight of the person in front of him illuminating the way out. He shimmied his body through and reached up to the protruding rocks above. He twisted his shoulders one way and his hips the other to make his frame fit through the random protrusion of rocks. With his arms lifted overhead, he was able to stretch his body to be as slim as possible for a 220-pound man and reach the top of the V-shaped path through the floor. As he began crawling away from the tight passage, he was relieved and exhilarated on making it through the challenging terrain, which was exactly what he was here for. But he quickly remembered that he would have to go back through it again on the way out, which left him with a nagging anxiousness that he wasn't able to shake. They followed the path along areas where they could walk freely, to narrow holes in the wall that required dragging on your stomach and toes alone. After exiting a low crawling tunnel, they came to a homemade rope ladder at a 45-foot vertical drop. The wooden rungs were cracked and hanging in some places. Each caver had to slowly descend the ladder in a nearly free hang down to the floor of the next room. It was like rappelling off the top of a 3- or 4-story building to the ground below, but in the dark. Beams from flashlights below crisscrossed the area, but it wasn't a simple climb, with the flimsy rope offering little structure to pull and push against. It was unsettling. After making it to the bottom, they were feeling the excitement of accomplishing it together. The next rope ladder was about 30 feet to the ground, but it wasn't easy to see from the top. It curled around protruding rocks, then tucked back in under a ledge, before opening up into the big room. After 3 hours of climbing and crawling, they had made it to the final stop. The 6 cavers were allowed to explore the area and passages attached to the big room. Dave Hardin let them know that the tour was a bit behind schedule, so he would be heading back up to the surface to make a phone call. He instructed the group to just go back the way they came when they were done looking around. So Bill and Jim, and the other novice cavers, checked out the big room and passages around it. After about 30 minutes, they started to head back. When Bill looked up the rope ladder in the big room, he was overcome with exhaustion and nerves. It's one thing to lower yourself down a treacherous, flimsy ladder, but something else altogether to climb back up one, especially when you were Bill's size. He started up the ladder, but was suddenly overcome with dread. He lowered himself back down and told someone else to go ahead. He and Jim talked a bit to calm himself and see how others were maneuvering around the rock overhang above. He tried again and reached the rocky outcropping, but the rungs were pressed firmly against the rock. He tried to reach up higher, but just could not find his grip. He was getting tired and frustrated, so he climbed back down again. A few others went ahead and adjusted the positioning of the ladder to make it more accessible. Finally, Bill gave it a third shot. He climbed past the overhang and tried to reach over the top to grab the ladder above. He couldn't get a grip on any rung or even the side of the ladder. His weight had shifted, and he was losing what little grip he had with his other hand. Just as he was about to reach for another attempt, he felt himself slipping. His 220-pound body slammed his back against the rock face 15 feet below. He tried to stop himself from sliding further, but suddenly felt the stomach-curdling instant of free fall. Then everything went black. Jim and another climber, Troy, hurried to help Bill. He was bleeding from his head and was just coming to after a momentary blackout. This was not good. He was bleeding in this dark and cold room, far from the exit to safety. A few of the climbers above hurried out to get the guide and let him know the situation. It was nearly 7:30, and they had been climbing around caves all day. Everyone was starting to feel the exhaustion and realization that they had a long way to go to get to safety. Dave had spoken with the owner, and they decided to try to get Bill out without making a scene with big rescue teams. They had customers in the amusement area above and didn't want to cause alarm. Once Dave arrived back in the big room, he decided that Bill was well enough to get himself out of the cave, then seek medical attention for the gash on his head. With the team assisting him, they were able to get him up the 30-foot ladder past the ledge and rock outcroppings. They had him belayed with ropes, which is the appropriate technique for climbing high rope ladders in dangerous conditions. The belay is a safety line anchored somewhere above the climber, assuring that any fall will be stopped by the additional rope held by the belayer, giving the climber a chance to reorient themselves on the ladder and continue up safely. Bill was feeling weak, and the others pushed him from below and pulled from above, eventually getting him up the 2 long ladder climbs. The group assisted Bill when he needed it, but he was moving through the rest of the crawls and climbs steadily. As they came to the V-slot in the floor, he was remembering the difficult twisting that was required to get through this tight spot. Several members of the group went through, including his friend Jim, who waited on the other side to help Bill climb out after the squeeze. Troy and Dave were behind Bill, ready to assist from their end if needed. Dave instructed Bill to go down head first, to carefully control his body to get past each obstacle. Bill dipped his torso down into the deep hole and held onto the rock steps in front of him. He lowered himself past the first few protrusions, but with his injury and exhaustion, he was in no shape to control his descent. His arms gave out, and he slid headfirst to the bottom of the hole. Trying to grab onto anything he could caused his arms to be helplessly wedged against his body. One arm was squeezed against his stomach, while the other was uselessly pinned behind him. Bill yelled out in pain, while trying to free his hands to push or pull one way or the other. He was completely trapped, and his own body weight was wedging him tighter and deeper into the hole every minute. After trying to free himself, he told Dave that he was stuck and couldn't move. Jim carefully climbed down to try to help, but could only see his head on the other side. He couldn't just pull him by the head into an even worse position. Dave decided to push from the backside and hope that he could get past the most narrow part, freeing one of his arms so he could finish the maneuver. Dave pushed, and Bill pressed against the rocks, but nothing happened. The small amount of advance that he made actually left him squeezed tighter than before, and his head was now starting to turn in the passage. Dave and Troy each tried to reach down in the hole and pull Bill back, but he was helplessly wedged in this difficult spot. The positioning of the hole left little room for the men to reach in, and only one person could try at a time. It was now 10:30, 3 hours after Bill had fallen, and there was still no help on the way. The cavers on the other side finally went to get rescue help for Bill, while Jim stayed to comfort his friend. Unable to do anything for Bill, Dave and Troy realized that they were actually trapped inside the cold cave, with Bill's body completely blocking the only exit. Troy was exhausted and scared. He had been in this cave for nearly 7 hours now, and the thought of getting stuck like Bill was weighing heavily on his mind. There was nothing they could do but sit and wait. The temperature in the cave was down to 44 degrees, and they weren't properly dressed for such an extended period. The Cave City Volunteer Fire Department was called out for the rescue. They mobilized rescue resources and cave rescue support immediately. As the teams converged on the cave, it became clear that this would not be a simple extraction, and time was of the essence. Bill had been upside down for several hours now, with his chest squeezed by rock in hypothermic conditions, with a bleeding head wound. Dozens of personnel showed up to help, but the space near the V slot was limited. Assessments were made, and it was clear they couldn't just pull Bill out to safety. His arms were wedged in a way that completely blocked him from passing without backing up to start over, or removing rock that blocked his way forward. The team was able to pass a rope to Dave on the inside. He carefully squeezed down into the tunnel with Bill and retrieved equipment to help lift Bill out from their side. They tied his legs and tried to pull, but the leverage was all wrong. Their efforts were simply hurting Bill without moving him at all. He was cold and groggy, with trapped arms and numb legs, barely able to assist in any way. The teams regrouped and started trying to chip away at the rocks blocking Bill's passage. It was a risky effort, but they were out of options. A single person could fit down in the side of the V slot and awkwardly reach around to chip at rocks near Bill's head. It was dangerous for Bill and could be deadly for both of them if there was a collapse. The entire section was unstable, and even small progress caused rocks and debris to fall into the passage. Bill was facing an incredible mental challenge. He was squeezed in a claustrophobic trap with people all around him. His breathing was labored, and he struggled to pull every breath with conscious effort. Rocks and sand were falling in his face, and he could do nothing to protect himself. He wanted to scream. They had bandaged his cut and placed an oxygen mask on his face, but he was hypothermic and upside down. By 1 o'clock in the morning, Bill was no longer conscious. He still had a pulse, but they had no quick solutions to get him out. Nearly 200 people had showed up to help save Bill, but they simply could not free him from this trap. At 5 o'clock in the morning, 7 hours after becoming stuck upside down, Bill Coughlin was pronounced dead. Jim was stunned. A simple day of adventure had ended in a nightmare struggle to save his friend. He could not believe that Bill was gone. The rescue teams were unable to reflect on his tragic passing because they still had an incredible problem. 2 men were stuck on the other side of Bill's body, and they had to get them out. Blankets, heat packs, food, and warm coffee were passed through the small hole near Bill's body. Dave had to climb down over the dead caver to retrieve supplies to keep he and Troy alive while they figured out how to rescue them. Over the next 8 hours, unspeakable methods were used to remove Bill's body. Later, the coroner simply stated that methods used to remove the body could not have been used on a live victim. At nearly 1 o'clock on Monday afternoon, Dave and Troy were freed after more than 20 hours at 40-degree temperatures. Questions quickly started swirling about how this happened and who was to blame. Clearly, Bill, Troy, and Jim were novices who had never been in the cave before. They had no idea what kind of challenges they would actually be facing. The coroner's inquest later determined that the operator of the caves and the guide, Dave Hardin, were at fault. There should have been additional safety equipment to prevent the original fall. Bill should have received proper medical attention before being moved, and a trained cave rescue team could have assisted in the exit to prevent the head-first descent, which proved fatal. The official cause of death was compressive and positional asphyxia. Bill Coughlin's family sued the operator and guide for negligence, and the case was settled for an undisclosed sum. The tragic loss of an amateur caver is a stark reminder of the risk of trusting tour guides positioned as experts.